get. So I ended up with chapter 7. So I feel as though chapter 7 chose me. And I think it chose me because God had something to say to me. And so anytime I work through presentations or lessons or whatever, there's a part of me that I have to work through. So if we're going to talk about the alchemy or the magical transformation, which is what I like to say instead, of tears, I had to first think about, well, what is my relationship with tears? It's a little complicated. I don't like them. I don't like them. People who know me would say that when there is adversity or when shocking things are happening, that I'm the person to find because usually it's, okay, all right. So we have 10 children fighting in the hallway and there are no administrators around. Okay, okay. I'm usually assessing and not reacting. And I would say in the first half of my life, that was a pride point for me. I thought, hey, when you want somebody to be able to handle a situation, you come and you talk to Daphne. Well, there's some things that happen in my life that account for that approach, and I share them with you, one, because I think it helps to know where the person speaking to you is coming from, and two, I think it has some bearing on what Richard Rohr says to us, and even some things that I noticed as I was looking at the book of Lamentations. My parents divorced when I was 8, and so I'm a daddy's girl. And my mom would not be upset hearing me say that because she would say, well, it's because I chose well. So that's why you're able to be a daddy's girl. I am. And so one of the first times that I went to stay with my dad for the weekend, I was so upset about having to leave him and come back home with my mother. We're at the door. And if you've ever been a mother in this situation, you know what went down. Oh my goodness. I don't want to leave my dad. I want to be with him. I love my dad. I all the waterworks, right? And so here's my mother at the door welcoming me home while I bawl and talk about how much I want to be with my dad. Well, didn't make her feel too good. I didn't care. I was a kid. I was only thinking about myself, right? So, eventually this moment it ends. My father leaves. Surprisingly, I have to stay. It didn't work. So after he left, my mother said something to me that chilled my bones. She said, if you ever do that again, I'm going to give you a reason to cry.
I've heard that.
Yeah. And I thought, well, who says something like that to the daughter who's crying? I'm crying and I'm upset. How dare she do that? I'm expressing my emotions. And so I did what, good children of the 80s do. I held it against her. I didn't say, you wait for somebody to invite you on a TV show, right? So you can talk and blame your mother for everything. So that bothered me. Flash forward, there's Christmas. Cabbage Patch Dolls. They were the craze. I hear some chuckles. I'm in here with my people. All right, so Cabbage Patch Dolls. I got a Cabbage Patch doll, and it was hard to get because we lived in Tyler, Texas. We didn't live in a big city, but I had an aunt who did, and she drove, and her husband went in there, and he fought with the women who were snatching and grabbing and fighting, and he was able to get the prize Cabbage Patch doll. And they brought that home covertly, couldn't let anybody see through the windows, never know what people were going to do back then for Cabbage Patch dolls. I got one. I was so happy. So excited about that doll. Loved on that doll immediately. My dad was joking around. He got my doll. Woo! He was throwing it up in the air, and I'm having a panic. No, this is my doll. This is my doll. Please don't do that to my doll. And I'm really getting anxious about this. He tosses the doll up. His head, he's bald. It gets nicked by the blade of the ceiling fan. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm having a meltdown. I'm thinking this is where my father, the one that I cried for and I want to live with, and he's the greatest, that he's going to say, oh, my poor baby, I'm so sorry. He got mad at me for crying. And I thought, I'm going to hold it against you too. Right? I'm trying to cry here. And once again, it is not the right time to cry. So when is the right time to cry? Right? I'm upset. This bothers me. I think the message that I internalized, first half of my life, was that you have to check and see if it's okay to cry. You feel it, but then I'm scanning for safety. Is it safe? Is this a space where it's okay for me to cry? Or will my tears make someone else so uncomfortable that then they think that I don't love them? That's a funny lesson, y'all. And I believe that I've carried that into my parenting. I was married for a while. I think that had a lot to do with just how I processed emotions and things that I felt very deeply, but I did not know, is it okay to give expression to that? So I come to this and I thought, how appropriate, Lord, that we're going to talk about the magical transformation of tears, which means that if you don't cry, I guess that's why I'm not magically transforming. Visuals help me because, as I said, he's done a lot of talk. There's been a lot of abstraction, in my opinion, about these concepts and how this happens, and it sounds poetic, but I need pictures. So this is kind of what I drew for myself. He kept talking about the way of tears. What does that mean? And he talks about the process of transformation by way of tears is largely hidden and unconscious, characteristic of the work of the Spirit. And I thought, well, gee, if it's hidden, you do a really good job of talking a whole lot about it. So how do we get here, Roar? He's saying that we're here, that we have anger at sin, there's some judgment, a feeling of superiority, and he keeps talking about these characteristics of the prophet, which is, I think, something else that kind of threw me off at first, because I was like, so is this a how to be a prophet kind of book? Like, what are we doing? But I think, and we said this in a previous class, that it's almost as though it becomes a metaphor and talking about us and our journey and our growth as people who love God and love God's word, that there is some path of transformation, just as it is true for those that he believes have this gift of prophecy for modern times. It's still true for all of us who are believers, that there's some transformation that happens, right? And so I use the stories that I told you about me and my parents as an example. Initially, there's anger. There was anger on my part at the offense. That was wrong for my mom to do, or that was wrong for my dad to do, right? You shouldn't have done that. Parents are supposed to whatever, right? And when I'm a parent, I am not going to be like that, because I'm going to know all of the things that y'all did wrong, and I'm going to remember them perfectly. And as soon as those instances come up, I am going to be the parent that you were not. And you're all laughing because, it does not happen like that, right? So that's the initial response. So how do I get from here to here? And what does that even look like? At 50 years old, What it looks like to me now is compassion. Compassion for two people who did love each other very much. Two people who had been best friends, high school sweethearts. My dad taught my mom how to drive. My mom was now about to navigate life by herself, and it was really important to her to feel competent and capable. And my response didn't help that, right? For my dad, old meanie, throwing up my dog. For him, it was embarrassment. I'm joking around here so much, but I was too loose with the feelings of my little girl. And rather than say, oh, dang, I messed that up, kid, I'm so sorry, it was easier to say, you shouldn't have done that, right? I see that now. And I look back on that memory with compassion for all three of us, for both of them. Because in that moment, we were just being fallen human beings. So what Roar is saying, how we get from this initial perception of things where we're inclined to look for right and wrong and judgment and all of that to this place right here is this pathway of tears. And the thing about tears is you usually don't do it because stuff is fun. Something is disordered, right? Something is disrupted. And that is how we end up suffering into truth, the way that the Greeks would say it. I'm an English teacher, and we used to talk to kids about that. And so it's like, what does that look like? What does that mean, suffering into truth? Well, it's different from just feeling pain. Pain is just like, ouch, it hurts. Wisdom kind of pursues or understands the truth behind the pain, right? Or at least what the pain makes it easier for us to see. So this is just kind of my image of how we get there. Well, then my next question is, well, what's so great about tears? So glad y'all asked that question through me. This is great. Y'all are like totally filling in the spaces where I was hoping you'd laugh. So I was just digging around. There are actually health benefits to tears. Didn't realize this. Saw an article, Psychology Today. The writer was crediting this researcher, Dr. William Frey, with analyzing a tear drop. And this is from an emotive response, right? So this is emotional, not just the I got stuff in my eye, so I need to blink. But those tears look different from the tears that are produced just as a reflex. And so it said that while reflex tears are 98% water, emotional tears contain stress hormones that get excreted from the body through crying. Whoa. The pain that's in our body, the stress, the things that we embody and we don't even realize, it actually comes out like toxins. They come out in our tears. After studying the composition of tears, Frey found that emotional tears shed these hormones and other toxins that accumulate during stress. Additional studies also suggest that crying stimulates the production of endorphins, our body's natural painkiller and feel-good hormones. What do y'all think about that? What makes it cool, Reggie?
God's created our bodies to self-heal, and so inevitably we're gonna hurt tonight. I don't know any of us that have avoided hurting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice to know that when we hurt, God has a way to help us through that, through this natural process. there's also, you know, sometimes people hang on to things and hang on to pain and memories that are toxic. And it's nice to know that by coming to terms with my sadness, my tears, and spending some time there, there's a benefit to that physically. So that's I think it's cool.
Thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a crier. Last time I cried was half a century ago. My nephews.
I'm so shocked.
And I didn't cry at my parents' funeral. My brother, my sister, and I'm wondering what that says about me, about the emotions. And have I just trained myself not to be emotional? And is there a downside to that? I don't know. But that causes a lot of reflection.
I want to come back to that. I'm not a crier either.
I know a lot of women in my life probably don't know about this study, but I always suspected that it's something that felt good to them about crime because they choose movies. Subject yourself to a movie like this.
Clutch your pearls, ladies. What do you mean? You mean that form of therapy, ladies, where we say, you know what? I think I just need a good old cry, and we crank up the music. We find our sad song. We find our sad movie.
But then you feel better.
Say it again.
I said, but afterwards you feel better.
You feel better.
And guys, if she wants to cry, let her. It's for your own good. If she needs that emotional release, by golly, it's gonna come out somewhere.
Now we're comfortable enough to start saying the things. This is going to be a good class.
I was always saying, but it's just a movie, you know, and that's not the right answer.
I'm right with you.
Well, but here's the thing. There's a part where you said, if she needs. I think Roar might argue there's no if about it. There's no if about it. And would also add that it's not just she who may need it.
You're right.
But that's a good point because you brought up
Thank you.
earlier, when you first started talking, I was saying that's 10 times worse for men. When you said that about that safe space, well, you know, now I might pick some of the movies, now knowing this study, but where's our safe place? You know, you sitting at a funeral thinking this might not even be a safe place. So, you know, we need it maybe more. Just we haven't been conditioned to understand and believe that.
Right. I think that's where society has done us wrong. Is because society says, well, it's okay for women to cry. And society says women have to be strong and hold their head up and not appear to be weak.
Louder.
He is testing the safety of the room. That's what I got you, friend. Come on. I'm teasing. Come on. No, he was just talking about the things, you know, the safety of the room, and how for men, like women, we may have this stereotypical view in our minds too about, well, they don't like to cry, they don't want to cry. Well, what about the perspective, are they given space to cry? Is that okay? Do we define strength as not crying? That's the thing that I was listening to. Like, strength is not crying. But what are we missing out on when we don't? when we don't. And for me, it's also about what am I teaching myself about God if I believe that God is strength, and I think strength means don't cry. How does that hinder me from identifying with a God who does pay attention, who weeps for me? Jesus certainly did, right? So what happens when you don't? We just read about what it can do for the body. We're not even talking theologically, just for the body. So if crying helps us to release these toxins, stress hormones, and it allows us to experience some relief with our endorphins. And then I also read that after crying, it also slows down the heart rate. So then what are the likely consequences for us for not crying?
Bottle it up and then you explode later.
Exploding, stuffing, heart attacks, strokes.
Not good for your health.
It's not good for your health.
Your gut.
Your gut, and that's going to impact how you're digesting your food, how you're able to draw strength from what you eat.
Also, you stay down there in that left-hand corner that you had, where you stay more angry and more judgmental and more in that, well, I could have done better mental state. And we all know that's not a good place to be.
And it literally is all in our gut, right? It's all inside us, that holding in. And I think that's part of where Roar is going with this posture that we present to the world, this perspective that we have. It's as a result of all of this that stays in instead of it being worked out and through.
It also tends to block your being able to be compassionate toward yourself. Because I think about my own life. I've had I had 3 miscarriages resulting in 4 babies lost. One was a set of twins. It didn't dawn on me until maybe, now that was way back 40, 50 years ago, whatever. But it didn't dawn on me until God had to show me, as recently as a few years ago, that I had never allowed myself to grieve that. And I always wondered why there was like an empty space inside of me where I couldn't show compassion to myself. But after this, I was able to go and grieve the way I should have done years and years ago. And like that empty space I had inside my own heart became full. It pumped more naturally, in my opinion, to me.
Thank you for sharing that. Deeply personal and very powerful. Any other thoughts?
A couple of things came to mind. I noticed that my father, as he got older, he never used to cry. And then as he got older, he did. And so I don't know why. And maybe your defenses kind of break down over time, or maybe you get wiser. But that's just one. And I know that several, at least men, that are more apt to cry the older that they got. And then the other thing is that I've noticed just sometimes I hardly ever, but sometimes I can cry on planes more than I can like during like a sad movie on a plane. And I wonder if that's in it, on like a business trip or something. Maybe it's because it's alone and it's lower stakes on a plane. You don't know anybody. I don't know. Or maybe there's something in the air. I don't know.
I think Roar would answer that it's this thing right here.
Yeah.
It's the hidden, the unconscious characteristic of the work of the Spirit. And that is a mercy, that it is a grace. It's not something that you conjure up. It's not something that you make happen, right?
Yeah.
It's a gift. I am brought to tears. I won't say that I'm a crier, just it comes out, but I am more aware and I am more accepting of being brought to tears by things. And I think, and I celebrate that as growth for myself. There is another hand.
Yeah, I was thinking with regards to releasing emotion, I think that we're gonna release emotion. Right, Ken jested about it earlier when he said, let her cry because you don't wanna be the outlet for that. But we're going to release emotion, it's just how we do it. Whether it's crying, which may have all these health benefits, or yelling, or throwing something, or we're going to get it out. It's just how are we gonna do it, and is that way productive, and does it have the same benefits for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we yelling at our wife or our kids, or are we, runners would run to get something similar, right? They can release those endorphins through running. There are different outlets to do the same thing, but is it a positive or is it something that's destructive?
Good. I like what you're saying. I'm processing because I'm thinking about my own journey. So my father has had like mythic status in my head ever since I was a little bitty. And he's still up there, but not in the way that he was before. And I think it's healthier where I have him placed now. So I told you this is kind of where I was. And I'm a researcher. I like to know the answers to things. Certainty is comforting for me. And given my childhood, I can look at myself with compassion now and understand why that's so. And if I cry, it's okay because we're normalizing that. What broke me was the disappearance of my sister. That is what broke me. And it broke me because my sister was young, beautiful, sweet, all the things that I felt like at the time I am not, right? And that's why I'm the big sister. She can be all the pretty, beautiful things. I will be the person you see if you don't treat her well. My sister went vacationing, literally went into the water, snorkeling, and has not been seen since. And that was 2015. Vacationing with her husband, some of his friends, and nobody could account for her. Nobody. And I got the call from my dad. And the time of night that it was, I knew something was up. And I said, is everything okay? And he says, no, everything is not okay. Other people perhaps would have been hysterical and all that. My father says, no, everything is not okay. No, no, this is not okay. My father, I waited for this big, massive search and movement and all of these things that we're going to do because surely this man who has this mythic status in my life is going to move heaven and earth to figure out what happened. And he didn't. He didn't. We had no answers, and he did not do it. And I was angry. I was so angry. And I did not even feel that I had the right to show it because you check for safety, right? So I didn't even show it. How how could you not care about her enough? Right? There's judgment. How could you do this? This is where I was. And it didn't matter how much I judged him. It didn't matter how much praying I did and running or exercising, Bible studies. It didn't matter. I still felt that until I cried it out. And what got me to cry, y'all, was my best friend crying for me. She cried. And that made me cry for me. Yeah. I still don't have answers. I still don't know. And God says my grace is sufficient. And it is. And I look back, and what can I see now? A man who was terrified because he believed that he was larger than life in the lives of his children. And he believed that he could protect them from anything. And he couldn't do anything about this. So what did he do? He just kept going. Because that's what he thought he needed to do. I see it now, but I had to go this way. And so that's why I hear you when you say that there are different ways that we can address it. But I think ultimately when you were talking about, but which one is productive for me, the healing and the release did not come until I could cry for myself, and then cry for my daddy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot of power in this illustration of tears and how all of that helps us to get to a better place physically. And if you take that model of the tears and the process of the grief and how that causes natural healing, and you apply that to the church larger, and maybe society, and how your friend cried for you, so she got out of self and she looked at your pain, and that caused a blessing for you. And so if you apply it to us as a church, how can our tears, or is there a way our tears for perhaps other church members, maybe our society as a whole, the world, can bring about a healing as well? Because, one of the bullets that you showed up there was to be more like God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be more like God, and if I see my brother, my sister suffering in some way, whatever that way may be, does a sadness there, an emotional response there motivate me to want to bring about a healing, or be a catalyst for healing to happen in those kind of situations, to make society better, to make the church better, to make the world better?
I love that question. And the reason I love it is because it was my final application question. So, Rohr talks about this, and this chapter is unique in that he spends most of the time really just talking about this whole process of transformation with tears. And he references the book of Lamentations. And I do think that for me, in the future, I want to go back and I really want to do like a series of studies, just sitting with Lamentations, because it's been good for my soul. One of the things that I noticed, I'm going to move, so, and it does connect to what you're saying, I promise. Lamentations is different because it's actually just it's a book of poems. I don't want to say just, but it is a book of poems, right? There are actually 5 of them. And there's an intentional structure to these poems. So like chapter 1, it's an acrostic. There are 22 verses in chapter 1. And each one of those verses, 3 lines, right? And it comes out to a total of 66 lines. And so this happens in chapter 1, this happens in chapter 2. In chapter 3, it's the big doozy because you have 1 line each with 3 verses per letter with this acronym thing. So now, instead of it looking like this, it looks like this. So 3 is like the longest chapter. Then you get to 4 and 5, and then I will say, like, by the time you get to 5, there's not an acrostic. It's just kind of petering out like, Lord help us. We're done, drop the mic, this is all we got, okay? What some commentators are saying and what I can get with is that in this book, it is an attempt to talk about the totality of human suffering and using the alphabet, kind of exhausting the alphabet to show the full range of what it is like to grieve and mourn collectively as a family, right? And so I say all this to say, you would assume that there's some big revelation of truth right here in chapter 3, because the way it's structured, it's the longest one, so surely there's something going on there, right? And it does. Like, this is the part where, but then I remember the Lord, da-da-da-da-da, mercies are new. But that isn't even how it ends. It goes back to, and life still stinks. When we started chapter 1, and this is the geeky English teacher in me, because it's poetry, there's the person who creates all of this. So obviously this whole book is intentional, right? But then there are different voices that you hear. When we sing songs in church, I'm camping toward Canaan. I'm not a camper, right? I do not do camping, glamping. That is just not what I do. But I am assuming the perspective of a camper, right, when I sing the song. In Lamentations, that first chapter, there's this narrator who speaks, and it's in third person. And so this person says, oh, how terrible this is. Oh, let me tell you all of the horrible things that have happened. So yes, it is a lament, and it's talking in general about all these awful things that have happened. But then, in like about verse 9, and Zion, Jerusalem is given the identity of a woman, so daughter Zion, right? So this person is talking about what happened, and she was unfaithful, and da-da-da-da-da. And then there's like this break at the latter part of verse 9, and it says, look, Lord, at my affliction, for the enemy is triumphed. At my. So there was this narrator telling the story of this is how we got here, right? Very rational, and this has happened, and this is how we're being dealt with. But then all of a sudden, there's this voice that says, look at my affliction. And it disrupts, right? And so then it goes on a little bit in chapter 1 to continue. But then this voice eventually kind of takes over and says, like, how are y'all just going to walk by and not pay attention to me? And it's the voice of daughter Zion. So going back to what you were saying, I think that even in that first chapter, I saw myself as the narrator, like the person who's able to look at things and say, well, y'all, this is how we ended up here because, this is sad, but we just got to remember, we got to hold to God's unchanging hand and do all the other little catchy phrases that we say. It's in the Lord's will and da-da-da, right? But it's creating space for that voice that says, I'm miserable. I am hurting. This is happening to me. To me, that's the question. What do we do? How do we do that? Whether it's in worship, whether it's in our life groups, our Bible classes, our friendships. how do we create space so that, because our natural tendency is to be the third person, and these things are going to happen in life, and we just have to. How do you create space for the person to say, I don't like this? What does that look like? Those of you who have been able to do it well, what does that look like in your friendships?
Well, I think it goes back to your experience. When you had the idea that there were people around you after your sister passed away. There were people around you who you cared deeply. I can just assume that, because that's the way we are. There are people who are people care. As a corporate body, we care deeply. Okay, but you didn't let it go until someone who was close to you gave you that freedom to finally release it. And I think that's where we make a mistake sometimes, is assuming that the feel-good and the space that we create in a church and the warmth, fuzzies, and all that kind of stuff is enough. And that's the do-gooder mechanism, okay? Yes, it's good. It does create space, but it's not enough. For us to let someone release, we have to draw close. The small group format is good for engendering a closeness, but it takes one-on-one. It takes people really seeing that you as an individual care to let you let it go.
Amen.
It's very hard to make that shift from caring as a group, because that's a safe space. It's easy to care in a group, but it's really hard sometimes to put ourselves aside and focus on the person who's really one-on-one in a hurting situation.
Tasha.
I was just gonna say, I agree with what Brother Ken was saying, but sometimes it was just best to be present. And the best way you can be present sometimes is just not saying anything at all. Just being there with them. And while that may not fix everything, because that's the one thing that I think we have to get out of our minds, is that we can't fix it. You know what I'm saying? We can't fix the situation. We also can't fix the pain, because the pain may be so deep. But just the idea of being present and someone to come alongside, I believe that makes a big difference instead of dismissing it. And what I mean by being present, I'm not saying that you have to be with that person all the time, but in the best way that you can, or a check-in, or look, just making sure that, you're good. And that's it.
Thank you for sharing. Yes.
If we want to be somebody who create a safe space, all we have to do is remove that little left corner you had started out with. The anger at sin, the judgment, the superiority. I can say the right thing and make you feel better. I heard all that. Yeah, if you've been through enough, you heard all. You said cliche, and I knew why you said it. Because that's Bible. It's not cliche, but we made it a cliche because we said, okay, this is the mode of operation that you go through when somebody's grieving and it doesn't work, and they don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it at that time because it don't make me feel better. And you thinking you can make me feel better is the bottom. It's not on us to do. Like Tasha said, be there, love them, let them know you support them.
Because Roar makes the point it's better to cry over things. Like all things deserve tears. Like it's better to cry over it than try to fix it.
Going back again to what Ken was saying about group versus individual action on behalf of a hurting person, it always starts with me convincing myself, like Paul talks about in Romans chapter 5, maybe chapter 4, about Abraham, against all hope, he was fully persuaded. So that's me. I have to always pray so that I'm fully persuaded that what this person is experiencing, that God can use me, perhaps, along with others, to walk along with the person. It's always about my being fully persuaded myself as to I can do what God wants me to do on his behalf. To help this person do like that point, and I can walk with the person, and I know if it worked for them because they may reach out to me later on, you know, for more of the same thing that God allowed me to do through him. And I'll know it's kind of like working then, and I pray more, be more fully persuaded that I can do more in that same area to help this person or these people, you know, and it's not me to be glory to God, but it's always, I just can't just jump in and do these things. You have to be fully persuaded that God could fulfill the things he promised to help me do. And when I get to that point, I'm at a different space in my life, and I can do some things, and something that, but I'm not in that realm. Ordinarily, I don't do too much to help a person out, because it's just about me at that time.
I'm going to say this, and sorry if it embarrasses you, but I feel like you give as good as you're going to get. Having a minister who is strong enough to cry in front of his congregation has been liberating and powerful, because it allows us to be in solidarity with you and by extension with each other. Because when you cry, because I feel deeply that you are my brother, I talk to you up there as though you're sitting right beside me. And I'm saying, it's okay, David. And that's something growing up, you better not talk in church. You're a woman, shh, be quiet. Let your women keep silent. Except if we need more communion trays. That's what I'm talking about.
It takes more strength and courage to cry because we're taught not to. I mean, I know when I was growing up, you know, the whole thing about being a boy, about being a man is you don't cry or whatever, right? So, you know, you suck it up and you keep moving forward. And it's not good. It's not good for you.
Nah.
So, it's not good. So, yeah, I think real strength is someone who can express their emotions without fear.
Amen. Because it gives us all permission, really, to do the same. So when the air goes off at BAML, that means it's time to transition. And I will obey Roger. So with this last question that we arrived at this point because of Reggie's question, you know, of what we do. And I would just say my preliminary thoughts from reading Lamentations and all of the grandiose things you have in mind that you're going to do when you teach and you don't, because it doesn't work out that way. One, for us to be aware when we are giving detached third-party like descriptions of things. Beware of that, not like, oh, I'm terrible, but just knowing that that could be a place and an opportunity to seek out first-person voices. Not just talking about the thing in general, but can we hear from the person who is experiencing the thing, right? Because that's a way of showing solidarity. 2, normalizing crying. To the point where, because I see you cry, it doesn't mean that I now have to give you tons of cards every day and, you know, would say all the things that start making me feel nervous, like, oh, is she worried about my soul now because I'm getting all these cards? But normalizing it to the point where, yeah, it's like that sometimes, you know? And we can keep going to make it okay. I think David's stance has done that for us. I think we have responded well as a congregation, even in our expressions of worship, in worship, right? But just normalizing that so nobody has to feel like really weird when they cry in church. It's not, did you see so-and-so cry in church today? And I would just say lastly, this church has loved me, and y'all don't even know how you've loved me. But you have loved me because you have created space for me to find my voice and to be able to talk about the things that I think, because as a woman, you don't always get the opportunity to do that. And we haven't always had the opportunity to do that. And that is the other thing that I would continue to say about finding the first person voices making sure that those voices do include women. Because there's a perspective that we have to, that we don't always get to share, and it contributes to the strength of the whole. And it's not that we're saying that everybody else is not valid, but depending on how we feel, sometimes we might say that. But no, but honestly, that's not what I mean by that. But just remembering to hear all the voices, and I think that helps us to move from the red, right, to the blue. Thank y'all for being here and sweating with me.